This is the Burdick Lexus and Burdick BMW postgame show.
Welcome in on the postgame show. Wake Forest holding off Syracuse in a sloppy back-and-forth basketball game. 81-71 the final score. The Demon Deacons over the Orange, and Syracuse still in search of that first power conference win of the season. They are 0-7 against major conference competition. Got down 19-3 in this game. Looked like it might be a runaway for Wake. The Orange did some different stuff. They rode that lineup that we saw a lot against Bucknell, this kind of post-Christmas holiday break rotation that they're going with, and it was the backcourt of Kyle Cuff, Lucas Taylor, and Jaquan Carlos, which, imagine if I told you that at the start of the year. Those would be the three key guards that would be leading the charge offensively for Syracuse. Those were the three players in double figures. Some of that is they're limited without J.J. Starling, but it was those three guards that played the entirety of the second half. Syracuse was leading throughout a good chunk of the second half. It was 47-41 at one point. They were up by 6. But down the stretch, the offense goes a little bit cold, and some costly turnovers in about the 5 to 6 minute mark is where the tide really shifted here. Syracuse actually took much better care of the basketball in the second half with that lineup, but I emphasize second half. They had 5 second half turnovers in the game, but again, a very high turnover game for the Orange, 18 total turnovers. So we will react to this one with you. If you are leaving the Dome, you can call in. 315-437-7644 is the phone number to call. Tim Leonard on the Burdick postgame show. We will get to Adrian Autry's full postgame press conference live as soon as he hits the podium. We will bring that to you. You can watch it on qsportstalk.com. You can listen to it on the radio airwaves as well, and we'll be with you for the next hour or so. The phone lines are already ringing here, and I know a lot of you will have takes after this one. I thought Syracuse sort of found something with that lineup, and the identity of the team is sort of shifting into a different realm here. For me, it feels like they've got some guys that they feel decent about defensively when they go to that lineup, and now, especially in this game against Wake Forest, and that was something we hit on the pregame show, that Wake is a defensive-minded team this year. Final score, 81-71, almost really isn't reflective of the nature of the game. It didn't feel like a offensive-minded game. I mean, both teams really struggled to shoot. Wake shot at 43%. They actually did make some threes in this game. The Demon Deacons were 9 for 19 from 3. They entered as the worst power conference team in America in three-point field goal percentage. So they made some threes. Syracuse continues to not make enough threes. Lucas Taylor had his best game in an orange uniform. He was guarding Hunter Salas and did some stuff that I really didn't expect Lucas Taylor to ever do in a Syracuse uniform offensively. He actually had a couple nice buckets in the second half. He was going against his former team, and he looked the part of a guy that we were hoping to get out of the transfer portal, or this is more what we were hoping to see when we did get a Lucas Taylor out of the transfer portal. Unfortunately, though, it just felt like the Orange were still lacking offense in this game. So let's go to the phone lines, and if you have a thought, you can call in 315-437-7644, and let's get right to our guy, Pat, in Syracuse. Pat, what are your thoughts?
You know, the psychological part of the game for a lot of the fans is during the game, you know, you get your competitive juices flowing. You're invested into the game because, you know, you're spending the time and or money to do it. You know, you've been following the team, but then you almost become resigned to the fact that you're just not good enough, which is one part of empathy, but the bigger piece is really this, okay? I called on your pregame, and I said my fear was it was going to be a close game.
Yeah, we were in agreement. I said the same thing, yeah.
And literally, there's three coaching things that happened that decided the game. The first one is the lousy pick and roll defense that Syracuse employed in the last 10 minutes of the game. Just time after time after time, they were getting those looks with terrible pick and roll defense. Just awful defense. Even the announcer said it. It took the announcer 6 minutes to even point it out. I saw it right away because anybody who knows the game saw it. So that's the first piece. The second piece is you had Wake Forest in the bonus with 2/3 of the second half left. And what do? You go to your weakness as an offense and you shoot more threes in that last chunk than you did the entire game.
How about no one fouled out, too, Pat? They end up with four guys with 4 fouls. That's tough to look at because some of those were key players. Yeah.
Yeah, so that's another whole point is as a coach, you have to attack those guys at the rim, to the basket, so on and so forth. Just totally out-coach, totally look like a JV coaching aspect. I mean, there is no excuse for it. You know, you got homers that will say if we had JJ, we would have won. I understand that. Everybody knows we're missing our best player. But you know what? The game was there for you. Wake Forest played awful for 20 minutes.
Yeah, they didn't play well.
It was 19-3. They played terrible from the 19 up until really Syracuse took a 5-point lead. But as you know in basketball, the way it works is the last 10 minutes of the game, the team that is really the better coach team and the better equipped team is going to win 9 out of 10 games. And that's what happened.
I will say, though, I don't know if in this game in particular, it felt to me like the last 5-6 minutes of this game was just Wake had better isolation scorers. They had better guys that could go get you a bucket. Syracuse doesn't have that without Starling. And then it becomes like guys that just aren't really experienced. Like Kyle Cuff is out there, and he missed every shot he took in the second half. And, you know, I think Kyle Cuff was good overall in the game. Lucas, I mean, when you're relying on Lucas Taylor for, like, isolation buckets, and he did actually come through, he kind of proved me wrong. I said in the pregame, I said, with this backcourt that they're going with, are they going to be able to get enough offense against Wake Forest? And in a way, they kind of proved me wrong, but it was a lot of just free throw shooting, and I don't know. You just don't have enough playmakers or scorers on this team right now without JJ, and then with Bell and Moore doing what they're doing and not even being playable in the second half.
That was the one other piece. Everybody knows why Chapa's on the bench because his defense is bad. But I got news for you. Everybody that was playing's defense was not good in the second half. I mean, you just see nobody knows
I think they were much better than Moore. I mean, Lucas Taylor is a good defender. Like,
oh no, I'm not talking Taylor. That's why they ended up putting him out there. But what I'm saying to you, Tim, you cannot disagree that Chapa Moore can't go from your second option to 0 points in 2 out of 3 games or whatever it is. I mean, that's these guys don't know their roles. They go from, oh my God, he's got to be on the floor because we can't score, to, oh my God, he can't play defense, so he can't be out there. I mean, there is a happy medium. These guys do not know the happy medium. It's knee-jerk reaction on the coaching staff. This game's on the staff. It is. I'm not. It is.
Yeah, we'll have to take a break here because I don't want to miss Red's presser. I hear you, Pat. I guess you're right. Like, I would like to see a little bit of Elijah Moore maybe in the second half. But
5 at home and during the double bonus almost, and you got 4 guys with 4 fouls, and you can't get it done. That's coaching. Simple as that.
He's out of here. He wanted to be an emphatic mic drop there. Listen, I think Pat brings up some decent points there. I don't know if this is the game in particular where it felt like Red was totally out-coached. I actually like that Red is kind of just throwing his hands up and saying, you know what, I'm just going to roll with these 3 guys who, we might struggle to score. I'm talking about the backcourt and the guards, but at least I know that they're going to hustle. At least I know that Kyle Cuff is going to be diving after loose balls, doing stuff, being hungry, being aggressive. At least I know that they're not going to have just mental mistakes, turn it over. I mean, a lot of these turnovers they had in the first half are inexcusable, and it's guys like Elijah Moore that's a freshman making bad, silly turnovers. So you look at what they did in the second half. They rode that backcourt lineup, and to me, it was just Wake had better players with that lineup, and I guess that's what Pat is arguing here is that you got to try and get something out of Chris Bell, something out of Elijah Moore, but at the same time, we're watching them, and in the first half, it's tough if you're the head coach. It's tough if you're any coach to say, yeah, we got to go back to Chris Bell. We got to go back to Elijah Moore because, frankly, they've just been really bad here in a lot of the stretches of the season. Now, Elijah Moore has done some good things on offense, but you take away the second half of Maryland, Elijah Moore has played 3 bad games in a row and really bad games. So I don't really fault Red too much on rolling with that backcourt lineup. That was the lineup that got the Orange back in the game. Did they get a little tired down the stretch? I don't really think so. I mean, Kyle Cuff was still running everywhere, and I was sort of amazed that he wasn't getting tired. But anyway, that's kind of the situation. So it's frustrating if you're a Syracuse fan because it just feels like they don't have the pieces without J.J. Starling to win a close game. We do have to hit a break. We can get back to your phone calls. I want to hit a timeout so we get to Red Autry's full post-game press conference right after this on QSportsTalk.com and ESPN Radio.
Warner Sales and Service.
Light isn't on, Jordan saying, I don't know. Tim isn't wrong, and neither am I. We can agree to disagree. Let me catch up on the chat here. Yeah, I mean, Pat, I think the tough part is you put yourself in Red's shoes, and it's like, how do you justify playing Chris Bell right now? How do you justify playing Elijah Moore after what you saw in the first half? And honestly, my critique with the first half was they get down 19-3, and he didn't call a timeout until the 16-minute mark. He didn't make a sub until out of that timeout, and it was like then they started playing once like Kyle Cuff and some of these guys that we know are going to give you energy came in the game. I would have called a timeout like a minute and a half into that game. It was just so that first 4 minutes was the worst stretch of basketball they played all year, which is hard to say. I mean, hard to think that's possible. They've had some bad stretches, but I don't know if, I mean, again, I think you just were fine rolling with those 3 because you've lost with the Chris Bell and the Elijah Moore late game situation. Like you got some positive momentum going. You took the lead with those guys. And it's just a shame that Kyle Cuff just isn't a little bit better of a shooter. I mean, he got a ton of open looks, and I think part of it is he just hasn't really been in that moment a ton. You were saying give Red a pass on the pregame show, Pat. What happened? Yeah, the last 5 minutes was tough because you're right. They don't really generate enough. I mean, we've seen it time and time again over the last 5 minutes. They don't generate enough late game buckets that you feel good about. I mean, it's also just a matter of like that Hildreth guy hits a tough step back 3 with like 3 minutes left, and Syracuse just doesn't have a guy that you can, like, without Starling. He was that guy against Youngstown State, which I know it's Youngstown State, but no one on Syracuse is going to like hit a step back 3 right now. If they do, it'd be like earth shattering. And Salas is just, he looks like an NBA player out there going against Syracuse. I mean, he can get you like a tough shot when you need it. Yeah, the 2 turnovers with like 5 minutes left were really tough, Zach. But I agree, Pat. I would have liked to have seen one of those guys foul out. Again, I don't know if we should be. How can we criticize the assistant? Like, Dan Engelstad was a head coach at the Division I level, and you got him to be an assistant. Is that at the time were we really saying, "Oh, that's terrible hire"? It's just easy to.
And Burdick BMW postgame show.
All right, welcome back in on the Burdick Lexus Burdick BMW postgame show. Tim Leonard sitting in the studio with you. We'll get to Adrian Autry's full press conference as soon as he hits the podium, get his thoughts on another tough one here for Syracuse. They fall 81-71, the final score. Wake Forest jumped out 19-3 on the Cuse. The Orange turned it over way too much in the first half. Kyle Cuff was really the whole reason they stayed in the game in the first half, came back into the game. Then Cuff went very cold in the second half, and the Orange offense went cold down the stretch. Despite getting to the free throw line, probably the most they've gotten to the line all season outside of the double overtime game against Youngstown State. I know they attempted 38 free throws in that game. This game, Syracuse was 24 for 32 at the line. That is 75%. So they attempted 32 free throws to Wake Forest's 26. And keep in mind, Wake had a lot of free throws in the last minute and a half or so. Wake scored plenty of points down the stretch, and they did not hit a field goal in the final 3 minutes and 34 seconds of the game. So in the end, Syracuse did get the lead. They were up by 6 at one point. It felt like maybe this is the game that they kind of break through, and it's a sign that they've sort of found some identity as a team. I still think there's some positives to take away from this game, that they have sort of figured out what they're rolling with in terms of lineups. Maybe you disagree. You can call in 315-437-7644. That's 4ESPN44 is the number to call in. We're standing by for Adrian Autry's full postgame press conference, which you can always watch on QSportsTalk.com or listen to on ESPN Radio Syracuse. We're here with you for the postgame show, brought to you by Burdick after every game. And keep in mind, you can watch these back on demand as well on our YouTube page, QSportsTalk.com as well. So no Elijah Moore, no Chris Bell in the second half. It's really puzzling that we've gotten to this point where J.J. Starling, of course, is out, and we know about that injury. So now you're looking at a lineup. Jaquan Carlos, Kyle Cuff, Lucas Taylor is your backcourt, and those are the three guys that are leading you in scoring in an ACC game. So it's amazing we've gotten to this point. We do have to go to Red, who is live right now. So here is Coach Autry's full press conference.
We too many turnovers, 18 turnovers, and we had 3. We've had that, in the last 3 games, 18 plus turnovers, unforced turnovers as well, some scoring opportunities, and then at the wrong time and free throws. When you need to make them in these close games, because that's what these games are, you have to be able to make those, and we just haven't done those. I thought our defense, for the most part, gave us a chance to win, but we just, again, when we needed to get a rebound, we didn't get the rebound. When we needed to keep making pressure on them and making free throws, or we get a rebound and it slips out of our hand, or we get a closed basket, we get too close to the basket, we miss a layup. Those are the things that that bother you the most. Those are the things that you can kind of control. And again, I thought we shot ourselves in the foot. Had nothing to do with anything else but us missing free throws, turning the ball over in critical times. Questions? We were down 16-2, and it's been a trend. that we've been down. And, that group, every time, they've come in, they've given us something. We've been able to battle. They've been able to give us some energy. Again, I thought that group, I thought Kyle in the first half, got to the basket, put some pressure on the rim. I thought Lucas did a great job of defending, Silas for the most part. Just guys that, they just gave us energy. They defended, they got after it. You can't play this game, on one side, right? You got to play both sides, and I just thought that they gave us the best chance to win.
Basically, stay with Is there a message being sent there?
No, I'm trying to win. At the end of the day, there's no messages to being sent, right? I'm trying to win. And I got the decisions to make, and those are the decisions I make, and I live with them. And, again, it's enough to support the decisions that I make. All right. It's enough. And, that's just kind of, the decision I made. I just thought they gave us the best chance. Again, we got up, we turn it over. We get up, we miss a free throw. We get up, we miss out a rebound. Again, just things that just can't happen. We had a chance, a couple of loose balls, we don't get. Fall asleep on Friederson. Yeah, he's not shooting well, but he can shoot. We let him get open on a curl to get himself going. So again, just self-inflicted mistakes that we make, and again, that's the frustrating part, because we've been in these games pretty much all year. Take two or three away, two games that were just we didn't have a chance, and that's the difference. That's the difference, and I don't know if our guys understand that. I hope we're trying to get them to understand that, and it's just frustrating. It's very frustrating.
When you look at the offensive side of the basketball, I know Wake was one of the better defensive teams in the ACC, but where were the struggles coming out on the offensive side?
Free throws, unforced turnovers, and then we had some that we missed around the basket. Again, Wake is, I think they were top 10 defensively. I thought, even, when they went to the zone, I thought we drove the zone. I thought when we got them into the bonus, we didn't settle like previous times. I thought we got it inside. I mean, Jair, he got a couple of shots. He got them blocked. We got the ball where we needed to get the ball again, and we didn't convert. And then when we needed to make the free throws to keep putting the pressure on, we didn't, and they made theirs.
Especially in the second half, when we were 4-3. And what was it about that period where you weren't getting out to those guys, to the shooters, and you went from leading to trailing during that period?
Yeah, that was what I was trying to get across to our guys. We put a lot of focus on Silas, and then we lost those guys, and that just can't happen. That's just the detail piece, right? That's the detail piece that you just can't let that happen, and it happened. They hit, yeah, exactly. We went up and they hit 2 threes, 4 altogether, and that got them back in the game and got them going.
Brett, it's been a sustained slump for Chris Bell. How much do you have left in the game? Your coaching bag of tricks to get him to snap out of this. What do you think about lineup change? How do you handle this going?
I think, it's tough to go through a stretch like this, and you try to, get guys going. But right now, it's just very tough, and we're not winning, and so it's tough to try to, you try different things, different matchups, different little things. But, again, it's a tough stretch for him. All he can do is keep his head down and keep fighting and battling, and I think, in stretches and when you have this, I know when I was a player, you focus on something else, right? You can't keep focusing on the obvious, and you try to make contributions in other ways, and that's what I need him to do. And I think that'll help him. I thought if Lucas, he had a layup that I thought if Lucas got it to him a little earlier, maybe that would have got him going, but it just didn't happen.
Coach, 3-point shooting has been an issue all season. Ravens had today. Do you have any, what's your explanation for why that continues to be an issue?
We got the shots. I mean, I don't think we took any bad shots. We try to create them off, some different, we can't get them off pin downs or actions like that, but it really has to be off the penetration. I thought we got some good ones. They just didn't drop. And it's kind of been like that all year, Lucas is starting to shoot the ball a little bit better. Hence, that's why he's, obviously getting some added playing time. I thought Kyle gave us a spark, but obviously he was out there a little bit longer today than he's normally has, and so but he was still, he found a way to impact the game. He got to the foul line 11 times. That was big. That was big for us. So again, when you're not shooting the ball well, you got to try to manufacture points by trying to attack the rim. When you get out in transition, try to get some easy baskets. And I thought that's what Kyle gave us today. That lift. Again, getting out in transition and attacking the rim. And again. But, the shooting pieces, we shot 22. That's the most we shot in a minute. I mean, not in a minute, but in a couple of games. And again, a couple of them, I thought they were all good shots, to be honest with you. And I know it was, well, you got these guys that shoot this way and shoot that way. They're not shooting that way right now. They're not, right? And so, that's when you have a lot of guys. That's what you try to do, right? You try to find some guys that can make some shots and can contribute again, and that's what that's what I did.
Coach, played a lot of minutes second half today. How do you like you see him today that you went to give him extra minutes?
Well, he's really the only point guard we got on our roster, besides the injured one that we waiting to get back. He's the only guy that again that can get people the ball, direct us, run our offense. I actually thought Kyle did a decent job, him and Elijah together at that end of the first half. They weathered the storm. But, JC is a guy that just, he knows the game. I thought he started getting into his groove. I think the only thing that I would say is I just, I wish he could have cashed in on those free throws, a couple of those free throws. But for the most part, he played a game that we needed him to play, got guys the ball, he penetrated, kept pressure on the rim.
Time for one more. You mentioned some of the slow starts, and so you finally see these other guys there. Is there a change in the starting lineup in the offense on Saturday?
I have no idea. We just got to keep plugging away. I got to, figure this thing out. We have to figure this thing out. We can't continually, keep starting and digging ourselves holes. It's tough enough, Again, the frustrating part is that, probably the last couple of games that we played, you go back, we've had chances to kind of win these games and self-inflicted, just mistakes, whether it's dribbling out of bounds, whether it's, having, short missed shots and free throws. Like that's what's frustrating. That's what's frustrating because I thought our defense, for the most part, was really good today. It was probably one of the better performances up until the end where we had to foul, and obviously when they made that comeback. For the most part, I thought our defense wasn't the problem. I thought offensively, again, it comes down to making shots, and we didn't make enough.
Thanks a lot.
All right, that is Coach Autry's post-game press conference brought to you by RomanoCars.com. I agree a lot with what Red said there, and it's unfortunate that they have put themselves in these situations several times now where it feels like they're in the game, 5-6 minutes left. It could go either way. And I really point to the 5-minute mark in this game is where I felt like it was lost, honestly. I feel like those two turnovers back-to-back where Wake pushed the lead to 68-60. They had an 8-point edge, which was the largest they had at any point in the second half. They got some momentum, and it was a live ball turnover and kind of a sloppy pass from Peter Majstorovic. It was a travel from Jaquan Carlos, and the turnovers were much better in the second half. We laid out those numbers. 5 second-half turnovers after, I believe it was, 13 in the first half, so 18 total turnovers. Way too many, but they kind of took out some of the guys that were guilty of the turnovers in the first half. Went with that lineup. That is a good defensive lineup, and this is the best defensive game Syracuse has probably played all season. They have now played back-to-back pretty solid defensive games. Granted, one against Bucknell, and Wake Forest is not really a good offensive team this year, and they missed some open shots. But at the end of the day, I really don't think this game is on Red or on the coaching staff. I believe that Red made the right call here with the rotations down the stretch. That lineup that he went with, that backcourt in particular, that he has gone with the last two games a lot, that's what got them back in the game. Kyle Cuff, it's shocking to me that we're sitting here looking at a box score, and Kyle Cuff attempted the most shots out of any Syracuse player in the game today. He had 14 shot attempts. He also was aggressive and got to the free throw line. He was 9 for 11 at the line. I never would have thought in a million years that in an ACC game this year, Kyle Cuff would lead the team in field goal attempts. And for that matter, it would be Jaquan Carlos and Lucas Taylor and Cuff as the three players in double figures. Like if I would have told you at the start of the year, hey, Syracuse, December 31st against Wake Forest, they'll have three in double figures. That might be the last three guys we would have guessed, honestly, especially the way the year started. Lucas Taylor has developed. Lucas Taylor was good today, and I've never really been a huge fan of what he's brought you offensively, but he's starting to make shots. He just gathered some confidence in this game, and going against his former team, maybe it was that. He was playing with some good attitude. So the phone calls are coming in. We will take a quick timeout here. 315-437-7644. That is the phone number to call. We'll come back and get to your phone calls. More post-game reaction here on the Burdick Post-Game Show. 81-71 Wake over Cuse on QSportsTalk.com and ESPN Radio Syracuse.
The three.
So, Pat, would you have taken Carlos out? That's the thing. I mean, you kind of need him. He's a guy that runs the point, and I guess they actually look decent without him at the point guard in the first half, but I'm totally fine with Carlos being in there because he's your point guard, and he's your only point guard that you have on the roster at the moment, like Red said. He does miss jumpers, and so did Cuff. I guess that's what I'm getting at when we go back to, like, is it coaching or is it personnel? Wake has guys that are making open jump shots, and Kyle Cuff, like, is bricking threes, unfortunately. And then, I mean, Carlos had, a 10-foot jumper that he airballed, like, pretty open look, and maybe that leads more to your point of, like, why is he out there? But I just don't think they have any options. Like, I guess the question is, what would have been your backcourt closing lineup today? Because given everything we know about the team, I was totally fine with him riding with those three guys. Yeah, 32 free throws, and you still lose. Yeah, I think that's a better point, Lock and Load. Like, having Carlos, Cuff, and Taylor as your backcourt right now is, and I guess you guys are right, like, the personnel falls back on the coach. I guess when Pat calls in and says Autry got out-coached today, I didn't feel there's been times this year where I felt that way. I thought the worst coaching error today was they waited too long to call a timeout once it was a 16-2 start. So Philly's most wanted. Do you want Elijah Moore and Chris Bell out there for the closing stretch? Because I don't. I just don't think they're giving you enough on defense right now. And they started the game and they were terrible starting the game. And I don't really blame Red for taking him out. We've seen Westry, and he hasn't looked good, unfortunately. So is that your line? Like, are you good with the backcourt, Pat? Because I think we can fall into the trap of why isn't Bell playing more? Why isn't Moore playing more? Like, we got to actually put ourselves in Red's shoes and say, who would you have taken out in these situations? I don't want to take out Lucas Taylor today. Most games I would have been fine with it. Today I didn't want to. Maybe next game Bell doesn't start. Wouldn't shock me after this. Yeah. I don't want Carlos playing 40 minutes either, but maybe I'm just, I don't know. The situation is not good right now. Like, Carlos is their only ball handler. So, yeah, that falls back on the head coach and personnel. And I totally hear you guys on that. But the specific rotations, he's kind of just trying to make lemonade out of lemons. Kyle's fine with the ball, but I can see you making the same point if you put Kyle Cuff out there for 4. I mean, he basically he played the entire second half and he can't make a shot. It's kind of the same deal. Like, I really enjoyed what Kyle Cuff brought today, but he's missing open shots. It's kind of the same argument we're having about Carlos.
This is the Burdick Lexus and Burdick BMW postgame show.
All right, back on the postgame show. Tim Leonard with you. Frustrating one again today for Syracuse, falling in the end by 10 points, a game they led by 6 in the second half. Just a nightmare start, clawed their way back in front, and didn't make enough winning plays for sure down the stretch. Frustrating last 5 or 6 minutes. A similar story to what we've seen from this team a lot this season, specifically in Power Conference games. They're now 0-7 against Power Conference competition. So, of course, the phone lines are jam-packed right now. We have a lot of people that want to chime in. We just gave your Red Autry's full post-game press conference. Let's get to those phone calls right now, and let's start with Chris in Syracuse. Chris, what's on your mind?
How's it going?
It's going all right.
SU needs to obviously clear a floor general. They haven't had this with Michael Carter-Williams or not Judah Mintz. He was more a combo guard. That's the problem. You can have they can have Anthony coming next year, Sadiq White, but to have a decent guard who can penetrate penetrate inside the paint, spread the floor. This team is not going to do anything next year. Pay the money, SU. Get some decent point guard, not some 6 foot. And they just started he's not really that good as advertised. I mean, Judah Mintz can score inside, great, but he wasn't really. He didn't really pass the ball as much either. So I know there wasn't much offense last year, but that's the main issue right now. They have the front court, I guess, but we'll see about next year.
All right, Chris. Yeah, I don't know if I agree with JJ isn't as good as advertised. I think JJ took a step this year and has been that guy that they are lacking clearly in the last 4 or 5 minutes in some of these games. Unfortunately, he's just been hurt, and we haven't been able to see him continue to progress and maybe be an all-ACC type of player because that's where it was trending. He was averaging about 20 points per game. I also feel like Carlos is a floor general. He comes with limitations. He was probably the 3rd floor general that they tried to get in the transfer portal, and he has gotten better, and I don't think you put this loss on Carlos. He missed some free throws, like Red said, down the stretch. But to me, they tried to address that problem as good as they could in the portal of not having that true floor general from last year's team. That was something that clearly bothered Red about last year's team. They didn't share the ball enough. And they did the things they thought. Now, maybe they are down. They could have used another guy so that when JJ got hurt here or someone gets hurt, now it feels like, oh, shoot, Carlos picks up his 3rd foul, and they're in a really tough spot in terms of who they have at the guard position that is a pass-first type of floor general. But I feel like the bigger critique with Carlos should be he's not enough of a scorer. He's almost, at times, too much of a floor general. So I hear you a little bit, Chris. I don't know if I totally vibe with all of that. Our call manager has gone down. We'll just have to play call roulette here and figure out who is on the line. Let's see. We'll bring you on ESPN Syracuse. Who we got on the line right now?
Hey, it's Randy in Austin. How are you?
All right. What's up, Randy? I'm doing all right.
A couple points. Yeah, I hear you. Yeah. So a couple points I wanted to make that I kind of agree with you. The Fire Autry crowd, and there's a ton of them, or maybe it's just the vocal minority. I don't know. So you don't have Sterling to start the game. Then you have 2 starters no-show. Let's be honest. I don't like to crush people, but I'm just being factual. Bell no-shows and more no-shows. More as a freshman, so you want to be. So what are you supposed to do in the second half? I kind of agree with you. Taylor's playing well for you. Cuff's competing, right? I mean, you can't have Kai and Anthony get out of the stands. I'm just making a point to be wacky, right? I know that's impossible, but I mean, what are you supposed to do when you are missing a guy and 2 guys no-show? And how many points did Chris Bell average last year? Do you have that handy? It was
I
over
think it was
10, right?
13, yeah. If off the top of my head, maybe 12. I think it was 12 points per game, yeah. And, of course, he shot
way
it
more than
way better, yeah.
It's way more than, 2 a game or what we have this year. So, I mean, I'm not going to be a total Red apologist, but he didn't forget how to coach in 4 months. If you want to get after him for the production of some of the players, but, there's also no mid-season trade deadline. So, good luck this year. And I feel for you guys to have to do the post-game show. but the Fire Autry thing, I mean, what else would you have done today, Tim? And I guess you covered it. When you have 3 guys no-show, okay, it's not Starling's fault. He's not there, right? When you have 2 guys no-show, if I think about it, I'm kind of amazed the game was so close.
I know. I'm with you, Randy. I feel like everyone that's calling in and saying, well, why isn't Bell out there? Why isn't Moore out there? They're 2 of your best shooters. You lack scoring. I don't want to take out Lucas Taylor in a game like this. And again, I've said at times this year, Lucas Taylor isn't giving you enough on offense, and he probably shouldn't be playing enough. Well, he actually has been shooting like the best shooter on the team the last 2-3 games here, and he was kind of their guy down the stretch. I mean, he was guarding Salas. He was pivotal on defense. So I'm totally with you, Randy. I think in this particular game, the thing that you should get on Red for and the coaching staff and the program for is they didn't really have the pieces. Without J.J. Starling, he's hurt. It felt like they didn't have enough offensive punch against a pretty good defensive team in Wake Forest today. And I think they are just playing tight because, let's face it, all these kids are looking at social media, all these guys on the team, and this season has been a nightmare to this point, and they desperately need a win, and they know that there's a lot riding on these last 4 or 5 minutes of all these games, and sometimes they're getting the ball in the right spot, like Red said, and they're just not making that free throw. They're not making that layup, and that's frustrating as a head coach, I'm sure.
Yeah, I got nothing else, but thanks for taking my call.
Okay.
I appreciate it.
Yeah, good stuff, Randy. I appreciate you calling in. A little positivity from Randy. All right, let's go to Joe in Liverpool. Joe, what's on your mind after this one?
Hey, guys, great show. I thought there was a lot of positive things out there. I really liked the rotation. Red was trying a lot of things. Hey, we are what we are. But what I didn't understand, I saw, I'm sure you guys were watching too, the body language and the timeouts. I just don't think there's that unity there. And then as far as, one of the young men there, I think the last name's Moore. There might be more to the story, but he, he's got a towel over his head. He's not even engaged in the timeouts. I don't know what's going on there. There's be more to the story, but what do you think of that?
Yeah, it's a bummer. It's kind of the Chris Bell thing at times where we live in a society or this time period in college basketball, there's going to be 2 or 3 guys that feel like they should be playing more on any roster any given year. And I think Elijah Moore is certainly upset that he's not playing more, but I would like to see positive body language, like from all the guys that aren't playing. And I don't really know. I wasn't at the game today, so it's hard for me to say exactly if Elijah Moore was super guilty of that, but I get what you're getting at.
On his head.
Yeah, I've noticed it too, whether it's him or someone else, and I think the reality is he's a freshman, and some of it is you're a super hyped up recruit. You go to Syracuse, everyone's telling you how great you are, and now you're not playing, and your parents are going to tell you that you should have been out there. Your best friends are going to tell you, and it's tough because Red just has to make those decisions. I like the way he handled the post-game press conference. He said, look, I can live with what we did today. And, again, I think he made the right call today in terms of the rotation. It just wasn't Elijah Moore's game, and it hasn't been his game for 3 in a row
I agree. Yeah, well said. I agree. Maybe he's holding out for some more money. I don't know.
Yeah, and that gets into the next thing, which is, and this is something Fran Brown has said, on the football side of things, you want to play these guys because you don't want to lose them. Like, we all think Elijah Moore has potential, but the team's 6-6, and they desperately need wins, and they desperately need some sort of positive energy that comes off of wins so that everyone buys in and everyone gets a little bit more motivated to continue on with the season. So Red he's having to make tough decisions right now where you hope that Elijah Moore understands that just because he hasn't played in the last 2-3 games as much as he wants doesn't mean he's not going to be a key part long-term for the program if he stays here. And And that's the tough part now with the transfer portal era and NIL. Sometimes coaches are probably in that position that Red's in, and they're still going to play that freshman because they're worried about that.
I agree.
Well, we think he really wanted to play, and he did play early on. That's why he started. But he got into a little bicker with the Wake Forest, and I think his feelings got hurt, and he got a little scared. And I think that he was kind of just hiding under the towel towards the end.
Yeah, I mean, he's had a tough stretch of games. So appreciate you guys checking in. That is Joe in Liverpool. We'll keep the phone calls coming here, as always. Oh, I think I might have accidentally... Mike in Syracuse, I apologize. I think I just knocked you off. The phone caller is not my friend right now. So hopefully Mike calls back. We'll take a quick timeout, and then we'll work in Mike's call here, 315-437-7644. If you would like to chime in, for ESPN 44 is the phone number to call. And we'll be right back on QSportsTalk.com and ESPN Radio.
The 3-1.
Nothing's working in here. What we got in the chat? Everyone happy? Yeah, I don't know how many old school Big East attitude guys are out there, unfortunately. LA Orange, I think it might be. I think there was something like tied for the worst non-conference season at 6-6, so could be. Quiet game for Lampkin. Just don't really feel like he... I mean, yeah, he had some turnovers and stuff. I don't know. We've had some big Lampkin games in the sense that he's like been a big part of the story, or... Yeah, I hear you guys. I mean, he didn't take over a game like you would have hoped for all unicorns and rainbows, yeah. Celtics beat the Raptors by 54. That's good. Jason, I'm not covering the Orioles. I wish. Yeah, I think Bell is going through it. Red has made some comments like, you got to step away from basketball, focus on other things. So, who knows? I mean, he's got to be going through it right now, just the way he's playing. And it's tough because, again, you put yourself in Red's shoes. You're starting him every game. You're giving him a chance to kind of break out of it. I'm sure they're telling him, keep shooting, keep fighting. And I think with Bell, some of it is just he's always had that, like, 2 or 3 guys that are higher on the scouting report, maybe, where, last year Judah Mintz drives, a defender is going to help off of Chris Bell more. Now it's like top of the scouting report, hey, this guy's a shooter. He's been struggling, but we can't leave him. I'm sure is what Wake and all these coaches are saying. So he's just not getting many good shots. And I think they could do more for him in terms of setting screens and stuff. Sometimes I feel like Syracuse doesn't set hard enough screens. They called one today. It was a ticky-tacky foul game, but they hardly ever call that moving screen anymore. And it's like, you might as well just do 5 illegal screens a game, because if one of them gets called, then you're helping out the offense a good chunk on the other 4 that don't get called. Yeah, Bell, I mean, he's just very one-dimensional. Like, we've seen it all along, but he could get away with being one-dimensional when the defense wasn't, like, the focal point of the defense wasn't him. And now without JJ especially, it's like, I mean, I'd like to see the numbers. I feel like as soon as JJ got hurt, Chris went in the slump for the most part. I think the Albany game was like an exception, but even that Albany game, he didn't make a 3. He was just kind of like better than Albany getting to the basket. It was kind of telling, too, when they had Kyle Cuff shoot the technical foul shots when Bell was out there. I think that's, if I remember correctly, I think Bell was out there. Jason, I appreciate that. I miss covering the Orioles in the Masson days. That was a fun time. 14,437, yeah. I mean, I'm sure that was a bigger crowd than like Albany or some of these games earlier in the season, but announced attendance, that's pretty low. A lot of the announced attendance comes down to are the students there or not, and the students are on break. Yeah, I think he played pretty well against Texas Tech. He missed a shot late that could have like swung the game, but I think he had 20-something in that game.
Lexus and Burdick BMW postgame show.
All right, back inside our postgame show. Burdick Lexus, Burdick BMW. And work in your phone call as we get into our final segment here. Happy early New Year to everyone out there. Not the happiest of games again today inside the Dome. The Orange falling to Wake Forest by 10 in the end. 81-71 the final score. That gets inflated because of free throw shooting, and the nature of the officiating in the game made it so that there were a lot of foul shots from both sides. The Orange attempted 32 free throws. Remember, against Maryland, they had 2 foul shots and did not attempt a free throw until 5 minutes remaining in the game was the only 2 free throws they had. Kyle Cuff himself had 11 free throw attempts in this game, and actually Cuff attempted 9 of his 11 in the first half. So Syracuse was aggressive with this new look rotation, new look backcourt for the second straight game. I think there are some positives to take away from this game. And the interesting thing going forward here is going to be, where does Red go with the starting lineup next game against Florida State on the road? Another game where probably going to be a close game. Probably going to be one of these games Syracuse could win, and Florida State's going through some turmoil right now. If you missed the news about Leonard Hamilton, he's being sued over promising NIL payments, allegedly, that have not come through. So Florida State on the road, another kind of toss-up game. We're going to be saying that a lot over the next 2, 3, 4 weeks here. Syracuse is actually going into today, they were projected to win this game slightly on KenPom. KenPom has them winning 4 of the first 6 games, or 4 of the 6 games in this stretch. I guess they've already played 1 ACC game before today. So had them going 4-3 to start league play. You probably realistically need to turn some of those losses into wins, of course, to really get some momentum and start talking about a postseason, whether that's NIT, NCAA tournament, whatever. Now, I know some of you are laughing at the thought of me even bringing that up, and I get it. But what I'm getting at is this is a big stretch here where there are a lot of toss-up games. And it felt to me today like once Red went to that starting lineup in the second half, I didn't think there was a chance that Chris Bell or Elijah Moore were playing in the second half, unless things just got really ugly. But I felt pretty good about the group that he went to there in that backcourt. And again, it's just crazy that we've gotten to the point where Kyle Cuff is leading the team in field goal attempts in a game, where Lucas Taylor is basically your go-to scoring option down the stretch. And Wake Forest did a good job of taking Eddie Lampkin out of the game as much as they could. Lampkin didn't play his best game overall. Donnie Freeman hasn't been quite as effective on offense as we've seen at times this year. But I would not be surprised if starting against Florida State, we just see Chris Bell and Elijah Moore on the bench. And Red says, I'm just going to try this out. I'm rolling with this group. I know that I have an identity with this group. I know that the things that are driving me nuts about this team are not going to be driving me nuts as much with this backcourt. You think about what they did in the second half. They had 5 turnovers in the second half after 13 in the first half. When you have Kyle Cuff, Carlos, and Taylor out there, you're just going to have less turnovers than when you have Chris Bell and Elijah Moore out there. That's the state of things right now. Now, the counter to that is you're going to have less shooters. You're going to have less scoring on the floor. But you're also going to have way more defense. And we have seen this team make a good amount of strides in the defensive end. You think about the starting lineup spotted them 16 points right out of the gate in the first 4 minutes of this game. It was 19-3. And then give credit, because Wake Forest, who they have some players, they're not really a great offensive team this year, But they end up shooting 43% from the floor, 41% in the second half. You can live with the defense. The frustrating thing is there was just so many points from both teams in this game from the free throw line. And Syracuse missed some timely free throws once again. The free throw shooting 24 for 32. That's 75%. If you're a good free throw shooting team and that is the box score at the end of the game, then it's not really a talking point. But we know Syracuse has not been a good free throw shooting team, and that has been a reoccurring problem of missing some close, timely free throws down in crunch time. And there were a couple that you certainly want back here. You look at the second half box score, the Orange were 10 for 14 at the line in the second half. They also made just 1 3 in the second half. Kyle Cuff was 0 for 9 in the second half, 0 for 5 from 3. Lucas Taylor is the only guy that really is out there and can knock down a shot when you go to that backcourt lineup. Now, Cuff can at times, but he got cold today, and even though he was getting some clean looks, they weren't awfully close at times in the second half. So if I'm Red, I think it's totally fine to just roll with what you have until J.J. Starling gets back and say, we are in dire need of winning games, which of course they are, and focus in on the backcourt lineup that we saw for the entirety of the second half and start the game with that lineup and see where that goes. Because as Red said in the beginning of his postgame press conference, this has been a concerning trend of coming into games flat, not getting the appropriate start. And unfortunately, it was 16-2 before you blinked your eyes. And some of that is just the starting lineup that they've been using is not a good enough defensive group. And it's a group right now that is making a lot of unforced turnovers. So I think Kyle Cuff gives you energy. I think Lucas Taylor gives you energy. And if Taylor's going to knock down shots like he has over the last 2 or 3 games, you can live with him being out there because he is a very solid defender. I know Hunter Salas had 23 in the end, but I thought he did a good job on Salas. Salas just made some tough shots. He's an all-ACC player, and he was the best player on the floor today for sure. So perfectly fine with the lineup that Red went with there in the second half. And honestly, at this point in the season, you've got to generate the best lineup that you think is going to get you wins. And it's unfortunate because Elijah Moore might get down on himself. Chris Bell, he's already down on himself. He's probably going to get further down on himself. And, you know, I don't know, maybe if we gave the coaches truth serum, they would tell you that they wanted to go away from Chris Bell a little while ago, but they were kind of clinging to it because they understand that for this team to reach their ceiling, they do need Chris Bell making shots. And you have to evaluate that, right? You want guys to be in the right headspace. You want them to still be motivated to come to practice and everything. But at the end of the day, this is not just some mini slump that Chris Bell is in. This is just kind of who Chris Bell has been since J.J. Starling got hurt for the most part. And, you know, it's easy to forget, like Chris Bell was actually putting up some decent game logs, decent scoring totals early on in the season. But I think when there's no defensive attention on J.J. Starling, it's pretty easy for Chris Bell to be at the top of the scouting report right now and for defenders to understand that he's a one-dimensional player and we just can't give him any open looks from 3. And he's not getting any good open shots. And some of that, could they run him off screens more? Well, you say that, first play of the game today. And a lot of the first plays in Syracuse in the last 5-6 years are throw it down to the big guy and try and get him confident with a layup. First play of the game today, they went to Chris Bell on an off-ball screen. He kind of had some airspace, didn't shoot it. Then they went to him again on a screen by the free throw line, and he didn't really get an opportunity to shoot it. But I thought that was noteworthy that they said our first play, because a lot of coaches, I don't know if this is for sure a thing with Red, but a lot of coaches will draw up that first play and announce it during the pregame speech and come out and make sure everyone is on the same page about the first play because you want to start the game off right. And it seemed like they were drawing up that play for Chris Bell, and he still didn't really have enough confidence to shoot when he first got the ball and didn't make anything happen with it. So to me, the coaches are trying, and at this point, winning games is the priority, as it always is. So I would not be surprised if we see a starting lineup change, and I think it's totally fair if you go to this newer backcourt here. Now, the press didn't work, and if you're going to go to that press to start the game, it's got to be more of a true press. I mean, to me, even against Bucknell, it was just kind of, we're going to force them to throw it side to side for 5-6 seconds. And then by the time they beat half court, once they get into their offensive set, there will be less time on the shot clock. And it worked decent against Bucknell, but Wake Forest sliced up that press. And there's just not enough on-ball pressure or trapping in the press right now to feel good enough about it. It just felt too easy to get through, and then there were a lot of 3-on-2, 2-on-1 chances, and I thought it was smart of Red to just totally ditch that. So those were kind of the two changes that we talked about in the pregame show. Are you going to stick with this backcourt lineup that is less offense but way more defense? And it seems like that is a trend because they played the entire second half, and those were actually your 3 leading scorers in the game today. The other thing was, are you going to stick with this press? And from what we saw today, it's a wrinkle they have, but they need to iron that out. They need to make sure that there's more on-ball pressure to feel better about it. So we'll leave you with that on the Burdick Postgame Show. Happy early New Year's to everyone out there. I hope you stay safe and celebrate 2025 in a fun way with some family and friends tonight. We will not have shows tomorrow with the holiday New Year's Day. I believe no shows tomorrow. That is the plan, at least last I heard. So you can count on shows to return on Thursday with Orange Nation, Paulie and Steve, and Brian Higgins in the 315, 4 to 6. Cody Mack from 3 to 4 as well. Should be back to our normal routine of shows on Thursday. We appreciate all of you in the QSportsTalk.com chat. Happy New Year's to everyone, and we will talk to you next time on QSportsTalk.com and ESPN Radio.
Evan, Canty, and Michelle are